Let's take a look at how to dismantle the 1911. So I'm going to do my demonstration with the Taurus PT 1911. It's going to be pretty close to every other 1911 as far as dismantling and so on and so forth. These are a little bit different when you take them apart than your standard semi-automatic normal tactical pistol like a Smith & Wesson M&P, Springfield Armory, and other types like the XDMs and Sig Sauer, P220s, all that kind of stuff. So the 1911s kind of have their own way of coming apart. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So the very first thing that you want to do is go ahead and lock that slide back and definitely check to make sure that there is no bullets in the rounds in there in the chamber. Then you can de-slide it. Now there's a couple of ways you can start taking these apart. I like to do it one way where I relieve the spring tension, because if you start doing the slide and you take things apart, things can kind of pop out on you. So I like to usually start with the front end, the muzzle. And so you have a couple of pieces right here. The piece on the front around the barrel, that's called a barrel bushing. To get that off, you have to take apart this, which is the recoil plug. And that's just a spring-loaded plug, and you can actually push that down. But it actually has a little pressure on it, so I usually like to use the magazine to keep that down for me. So I'm going to take the magazine out, and I'm going to just use the end of the magazine to push that in a little bit. As I push that in, I'm going to take this barrel bushing and I'm going to just move it to the side. So if I push that in, you can see it kind of moves to the side a little bit. And then what you want to make sure of is that you don't move it to the side far enough that you're not holding on to that barrel, the recoil rod plug, because that is under pressure and that will shoot out if you don't hold it. So you just hold it with your finger as you move this to the side, and it releases that, and so you can just slowly let that out. And so the recoil plug and the recoil spring, we can let that go. And that releases the pressure at least. So now this barrel bushing, I got to slide the other way. And once I go all the way this way, you can actually just lift it straight out. So that unlocks that. And now, if you tilt the pistol forward, some of the stuff will fall out, just the recoil, but it's not going to fall out. It's just loose in there, but that's okay. So usually what I like to do is hold it upside down and show you this piece of it. So this piece right here is what you actually have to push when we flip this gun on the other side. So that's what I'm going to be pushing with my finger. So I'm going to flip this over, and this piece right here is called a slide stop. And so I'm going to push that button, that's the other side of the slide stop. So on the slide you have two indentations right here. This actually is the locking slide lever, that's what locks the slide back. And then there's a smaller one that's right next to it, and that is actually the piece that fits, and you got to get that lined up with your slide stop right there so it comes off. So you're just going to slide that back, and now it's easy because all the pressure is off of it. So let me see if I can get that in there. So that lines up with that little tiny groove right there. So I'm going to just push in the other side with my finger, and you can see it kind of pops out a little bit. So now you can just remove that. It just pulls right out, and that is the slide stop. And then you can just take the slide and then move it all the way forward. And this is where I usually like to turn it upside down, because if you don't, some of the things can spill out. So you just take this is the frame receiver piece, you can put that off to the side. And then inside you have the recoil spring rod, and you just take that and slide that back. And then you also have the barrel. Now normally semi-automatic pistols, you can take the barrel and just kind of pull it backwards. These 1911s you can't, you have to slide it out the muzzle, the front. So that slides out the front, and then you have the slide with a couple other little pieces in there, and so on and so forth. It looks like I need a good clean. If you just watched my previous video, I show you my recommendations on how to properly clean a pistol, handgun. And so now you have all the pieces and you can clean. This is just a basic field strip of a 1911. So let's talk about how to put it back together. So I always start with the slide, and then you're going to take the barrel and you're going to put the barrel back in the front. So it just slides right in and locks into place. And then this little piece right here is what you have to be kind of concerned with as you put this back together. This is called a barrel link, and that's what holds the barrel onto the frame when you fire it. And so here is the recoil guide rod, and you're going to notice on the guide rod there's usually going to be a piece that's slightly rounded, kind of curved. That's what sits on the barrel. So you got to make sure that's facing down. So that's going to fit right on the barrel, and it looks like it's cut just for that. So you take this barrel link and you move it up so that you can kind of see that hole. So when you put this back together, this slide stop, this little piece right here is got to fit through the slide and through that. So it's got to hook onto that. It's a little bit tricky sometimes, but you just got to kind of watch and watch what you're doing. So I usually take the end of my finger and I'll plug these just to hold these pieces in, because I don't want that sliding forward, otherwise I'm not going to be able to find it. So I take the frame and I'm going to put it back on the slide guides, grooves, and I do this upside down. So I'm going through and I'm also looking through this hole, and I'm looking through that barrel, looking for that barrel link. And so sometimes you got to kind of work it in, and I can see that that fit perfectly. So I can see that it actually is totally lined up, and then you take your slide stop and you put it back on, and you're going to be able to probably get it about halfway through, which is totally fine. So it's about halfway through, and then you slide the slide back until it lines up with that groove again, and then you can just push it all the way back into place. So it's all the way flush. And then I can push the slide all the way forward. And then what you got to do is make sure you hold the slide, and then you just tilt the pistol up, and then you can put that barrel bushing in first. So that barrel bushing goes in first, and then you have to turn it totally out of the way. Let's see if you can see that. There we go. So turn it totally out of the way, and then that spring goes back on that rod. So it's just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it all the way down until I get to this piece, and then push that up to hold it into place. So let's see if you can kind of see that. And so I'm going to push in with my thumb right here as I'm also pushing this piece down, this plug. So I'm going to push in and push over, and you can kind of see it's almost into place. So I'm just going to keep bringing that and swinging it over until it clicks. So it clicks into place, everything's lined up perfectly, and you are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and cycle it and decycle it, and I am ready to go. Slide's not coming off, everything's back into place, and I am ready to rock and roll. And you can put the magazine in, and that is how to take apart and put back together the most 1911s. I hope you found this video interesting and at least informative for when you are taking apart and handling firearms. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Stay tuned. I'm going to start a new series from building an AR-15 from nothing but parts.